My daddy was what you would call a mean drunk. He was mean most all the time, but when he was drinking, he took it to a whole nother level. My mama stood it for as long as she could until one day she just took off with this fella who sold farm implements. Now, I don't blame my mama for that. There was not a woman in the world who could have lived with my daddy. And I don't blame her for leaving me behind. I think she well knew that my daddy would have hunted us both down and likely have done us both in. Nobody was going to take his boy. Not that he cared for me particularly. It was more like, I guess, a matter of principle or something. Now, my daddy, he had this thing about crying, about me crying in particular. If I ever hurt myself, and cut my finger, fell out of a tree, and I started crying, my daddy, he would lay into me. He said, "Don't you dare cry. Don't you dare be a crybaby. I see you crying, and I'll give you something to cry about." And he did exactly that on more than one occasion, until eventually I learned never to cry in front of my daddy. Now, I wasn't but 8 or 9 when my mama left, and I spent the entire day hiding up in the hayloft and crying my eyes out over my mama. Now, some years later, I was 13 or 14, I had this dog. She was just some mongrel dog, but she was a pretty thing. Looked sort of like those sheep herding dogs they have in Australia. I called her Lady. I had to keep her in the barn because my daddy, he hated dogs. He hated most anything that walked or crawled and breathed. He was the kind of fellow who'd swerve his car to try to hit animals crossing the road. Cats, dogs, possum, coons, didn't matter. And when he'd get one, he'd be all excited like, "Hoo boy, you see that?" Like it was some wonderful thing he did. And I suppose it was one of the few sources of joy in his life, hurting things. Anyway, I love this dog. At that time and place, she was pretty much my only source of comfort and companionship. Anyway, one day she come into heat, as female dogs are wont to do. And of course, the neighbor dog gets wind of this, and he shows up in the yard, and they start doing what dogs are inclined to do. And I don't know if you know this or not, but once a couple of dogs hook up like that, they're more or less stuck together until the deed is well and done. Well, as it happens, my daddy was hitting the Jim Beam good and hard that day, and he was in rare form. And he happens to catch sight of these dogs out the window. He comes flying out the back door with his shotgun, yelling something about, "There ain't gonna be no more goddamn dogs around here, I'll tell you." And before I even know what's happening, he goes over to that neighbor dog and blows its head clean off. Of course, my dog, she panics, but she's more or less still stuck to this other dog. And my daddy pumps that shotgun, and I know what's coming. So I got running over, waving my arm, saying, "Daddy, Daddy, please don't shoot my dog." And he just backhands me and sends me flying. You stay with me, bud. And then he shoots my dog. Now, I was distraught, as you might well imagine. And I went running over and threw myself on top of my dog and started crying and sobbing and carrying on. And of course, my daddy, he's not having none of that. He grabs me up by the back of my neck and puts his face in mine. He says, "Don't you dare cry. Don't you dare make one more sound. I swear to God, you make one more sound and I'll take off my belt and whip your ass until it bleeds." Now, my daddy may have been a lot of things, but one thing he was not was a man who made idle promises. And it took everything I had to swallow back those tears and that pain, like swallowing a piece of rancid meat. But I did it because I knew what would happen if I didn't. Now, the thing is, my daddy broke something in me that day, and I have never, no matter how much something may have hurt me or how heartbroken I was about something, I have never, from that day to this one, been able to shed a single tear in sorrow. And there have been 100 times when I wish I could. And that's about all there is to say about my daddy.